Welcome to the Stressless Eating Podcast, where we help diet-obsessed and food-crazed women break themselves out of the food and body prison, end the dieting madness, and take control of their health for good. I'm your host, Leanne Ellington, and this podcast is about answering one question. How can you heal your relationship with food and your body and take a practical approach to this whole self-love journey, but without all that restriction, obsession, and shame, and without needing years of therapy just to do so? If you want to know the answer, you're in the right place. All this information is 100% free, so please subscribe to and review our podcast. Right, we are back for another episode of the Stressless Eating Podcast, and I'm so excited to welcome back Jessie Torres, who was here in season 1. We will absolutely link the link from our original episode in the show notes. But first of all, hello, Jessie. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Leanne, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We got a lot of positive feedback from the first episode. So for any of you who missed our first episode, a lot of it was talking about toxic shame and what that does to our self-image, our self-worth, how we show up first and foremost to and for ourselves, and then how we extend outward into others. And oftentimes we're living in this kind of prison of shame, and we don't even know it until we know it. And so today, we want to kind of talk about what's on the other side of that. How do you take your pain and shame and suffering and turn it into something that actually moves you in the direction that you want to go in? Whether it is renewed health, whether it's actual purpose and passion in your career, your relationships, all that, there is another side of it. And so we are going to talk all about that, what keeps us from doing that, the beliefs that might pop up in the process of that, and all of that good stuff. So we'll go ahead and just kind of dive on in. So before we do, just for anybody who doesn't know you, who hasn't heard the first episode, like I said, we'll link it in the show notes. You kind of just give us a rundown of who you are and what you're here to share in this world, and maybe a little bit of just a brief kind of overview of your thoughts of what I just mentioned, and then we'll dive into the nitty gritty.
Absolutely. Yeah, in a nutshell, and I this is like my favorite topic ever, because I feel that it is a product of my journey, really taking a very apathetic state of being and not wanting to live anymore and wondering how the heck I got here, to that stage where, you're just wishing somebody would blow the red light, because I had kids and doing it myself was not an option. But to kind of wake up to that kind of like unknown and confusion of like, who in the frick am I? I didn't even know what my favorite food was, or what. I didn't know Jessie. What I knew is how to be what everyone needed me to be in order to keep the peace. And so to kind of come to that wake up call when that's the greatest day is having an almost near miss death experience, that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And so in that context, kindness is what literally opened my eyes and made me want to choose life, because I had no idea what that meant. From what I knew, my father and with his abuse was, people just want to get in your pants, Jessie. So don't trust anybody, right? Which is what my father was doing to me. My ex-husband was like, Jessie, people want to subconsciously break up a good thing. So don't talk about our marriage to anybody. Why? Because he was verbally, emotionally, mentally abusive, and so I looked at everybody like I needed to like not make eye contact, not connect and not have conversation, because they would want to somehow interrupt or hurt me in some way. So everyone was guilty before they listen. And coming from love being my lenses, it was really hard to kind of pretty much take Jessie and put her in the corner and say, shut up and don't make eye contact, don't talk to anybody. Wow. That's just going to get your husband in fights and you in trouble.
Right.
So when kindness was shown, it was like pop, like something clicked. Like, I don't know what this is. I didn't know to call it kindness. I just recognized that people were being good to me without anything in return. And I something alive in me, something came alive. Like, I was like, I don't know what this is, but if this is available, life is worth living. And from that context, I started initiation of my divorce and a hunger and a desire to understand. I never used to read. I started to pick up books. I started to go to personal development workshops, seminars. I went to therapy. I did everything I needed. I wanted to understand why my dad did what he did, why my mom ignored it, why my husband did what he did, and why I allowed it. And it created this hunger to understand human beings. And that's what got me to be on this quest. And what it's led to is an evolution of my own spirit. And from that, I'm able to look at myself, because I think we're all souls and we're spirit before we're human, right? And we're this concept. And then we have this human body, and then we have these human experiences. And so I'm able now to connect to that higher part of me and see the evolution of Jessie and fall in love with her for having gone through that pain. Because now every day that I serve somebody in some sort of suffering, I honor the journey. And now there's no anger, there's no resentment, there's no shame, there's no believing that things should have been different, because I get to be who I am today.
Because of all those things that happened to you, and reconciling, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have, if I hadn't gone through that fire.
That's right.
So just to kind of share a little anecdote about us, Jessie, we met in a coaching environment. She was my coach. And one of the things that you asked me that really helped me step into who I'm being today, to this day, is you asked me hey, Leanne, why do you do what you do? And one of the things, and I shared with you, hey, this is where I was, I was living in my own food and body and shame prison. And, I want to help people to avoid all the suffering that I did. And you asked me, you're how present are you to that pain? And I remember experiencing wow, I actually did my best, not to revisit it, because I was I had fears that it would be too painful or anything like that. I just wanted to avoid it. And I knew why I was doing what I was doing, but I was kind of disconnected from my pain in a way. And one of the things that you pointed out to me is that as long as I'm disconnected from my own pain and my own shame, I'm going to, by extension, be disconnected from the pain and the shame of the people that need my help liberating themselves from that. And so one of the things that you had me do is reconnect to that version of myself, the food prison, the body prison, the shame prison, self-loathing, all of the self-condemnation, self-rejection, all of it. And interestingly enough, it wasn't as painful as in my mind I made it up to be. And I remember how powerful of the experience it was. It changed my experience of myself. It changed how I was able to show up for other people. And I would say by extension, including putting this podcast out there, and I vowed never to forget that pain. And so so first of all, thank you. And everybody listening, you should be thankful to her. No, just kidding. But we tend to think that pain has to stay painful. Pain is traumatic. And one of the things that you help people unlock is how to turn that pain into purpose and passion, and even profits, if that's where they want to take their business. In my case, my business is my purpose, So can you just kind of speak into that concept of how do we take that pain and how do we transform it without sitting in it, without becoming a victim to it, without letting it take over our lives?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And the first thing that popped into my mind was, forgiveness and acceptance, right? So first of all, in going through our journey, and the reason being is that we work so hard, to get out of the pain that we suffered, and we work through our shame story or any of the pain that we suffered, and we really want to get away from that. And so it's great. We build a beautiful muscle, we get on the other side of it. But if you're going to turn it into purpose, then that means that your journey was divinely choreographed on your behalf, so that you can build this muscle to now pay it forward to others, right? Whether that's in your current career or whether that's in a business that you create. But what happens is we work so hard to get on this side of it, and now we want to help people get outside of it, that we forget the depths of pain that we were in. And And all of that came from my own experience of being on this other side of it. Because what I didn't mention is that in my quest to understand this, I, became a Tony Robbins coach. I went to India, got a meditation instructor coach. I'm a trainer for heart math. I've unpacked all of this stuff so that I can now be this person, because I thought if one human being is served by something I said, then every part of my journey was worth it. And I remember thinking, because now I see people through the lenses of beauty. I'm like, how do you not know how beautiful you are? How do you not see your greatness? And I stopped and I thought, well, wait a minute, Jessie, you didn't back then. Mm-hmm. You didn't even know to call it shame. You had no idea. You just wanted to die. And so I thought, I have to stop and I have to go back, because now I see through these lenses on the other side of it. And I'm like, how do you not? And it's like, wait, remember the darkness you were in, and almost like a veil of not being able to be witness to what was possible or what was available. In fact, one of a moment, there's certain moments that happen in our lives that kind of stay in our memory bank. In the moment, we don't really know the magnitude of the experience, but it never leaves us. Yeah. And that was when I was coming out of my divorce, and my ex-husband was in the police force, and he carried a gun, and it was very uncertain times for me. And I was not sure. He was very filled with rage. He was very angry. And at one point he had a friend of his who was making death threats to my boss, my teacher, like all these different, whatever man was in my world. And the teacher had called the police because he had a tape recording of somebody making a death threat to him. Like, you better watch your back. I know where you live, blah, blah, blah. And so I got a phone call at work from the sheriffs. And they're like, we need you to identify this guy because we believe we know who made this call and we need to handle this. I was petrified. And I was like, oh my God, if my ex finds out, I'm dead. I don't even know what he'd do. And they were like, ma'am, we can't stop this if you don't help us. And this gentleman, he's concerned about his daughters, So anyway, I agreed to meet them, and I met them in the parking lot of the local community college because I was so scared. I was like, maybe that's the one place he wouldn't know to find me. And I was sitting in the back of the police car, and the sheriff, and I wish I knew his name to this day, but the door was open and he leaned in and he looked at me, and I don't even know what kind of look I had on my face, but he just said, you don't have to live this way. And I remember being so confused. Like, what do you mean? This is all I know. And so, but it triggered, it planted this seed of you mean there's another life? There's another way of living? And that was all he said, but I never forgot it. And it just kind of wait a minute, what? And so I share that because I want to express how in the dark I was. I didn't have context around it being different. I was in massive survival, and I knew that I wanted out of my pain. So from that context, now to be able to go back and remember that, I can see the courage that Jessie had to have, right? I can see her fear, but I can see how brave she was. I can see the nights that I spent in the parking lot of Grace Baptist Church because I didn't want to go home because he was just going crazy with verbal stuff in front of my kids, and I just needed to rest, and looking at her as the champion in the arena, but also recognizing the depth of her pain. So the beautiful part about our divine choreography and the journey is that when you go back, you bring forgiveness to every single time you judged yourself. Every single time I judged Jessie for not being stronger, for not speaking up, for not saying this is not acceptable, I judged myself so badly that when I can go back now and I can fall in love with her, and I can see that maybe, just maybe, God partnered me with my ex to be the adversity in my world that was going to help me wake up one day and decide that life was worth living enough to learn the skill set to help other human beings. That's where the acceptance comes in. But I can't do it if I'm still judging it was wrong. If we don't go back and find the gift, we only remember the pain.
Absolutely. There's two things that you just said that I'd love for you to touch on. The first thing is this idea of like, I don't even know that there's a different, like, I can't see what I can't see. I don't even have the awareness because this is all I know. And it happens so often with the women that before they come through the stressless eating program, they're like, wait a minute, there is a world where I don't have to like restrict and control and micromanage and shame myself and blame myself or overindulge and numb out on food and all those things. Like, I don't even know what that would look like. I've been indoctrinated into it so long, right? There's that side of it. I'd love you to speak into like, what's when you don't even have an awareness or an understanding that something else is possible. What's the first step? And I'll save my second question for after you answer that.
Yeah. Well, so this is what's great about you, Leanne. So energetically, we're in this place of defeat, but we're still breathing. We're still alive. So there's a seeker inside that's like, is this really all there is? Is this really the way my life is meant to be? And when there's people like you out there in the world who are going, hey, you don't have to live this way. And energetically, the seeking part of them connects with your calling, right? I'm calling out to all of you, people that are addicted to your food or you use it as a way to cope or whatever. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to be that way. There's an energetic match. So I'm here to speak to the seeker part of every human being. Maybe their destiny is to stay in pain. I don't know. Maybe their contract with God is to stay in pain so that their daughter never becomes food addicted. You know what I mean? I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm going to put a call out to anybody that feels stuck, to anybody that feels like this is all there is to life. I feel like there's more and I just don't know how to find it. And for you, it's like people are like, I don't know how to get out of my body prison. I just know that I'm obsessed with it, but it doesn't feel good. And in that, there's that whisper, right? That whisper in their heart that says, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. And they may Google something, or they may, pick up a book. And even though they don't believe that it could be different, they're seeking. And then all of a sudden pops Leanne, and says, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. And if we could all stand in the purpose of our journey in this world and call out, hey, I get you. I see you, right? Because reading how to climb Mount Everest and actually climbing it are two different things, right? You've been there. That's why I wanted you to remember that, because being there allows you to feel that sense of lost. I don't know. There's no one that gets me. There's no one I don't want to freaking another diet.
Yeah. I've
tried them all. There's got to be something else. And that one moment that they shift into wanting to seek is the moment energetically that you pop into their world, or they hear something, or they listen to your podcast, or, something. So God bless you for going through it and being here today to serve others. And I invite that we all have something like that within our journey, and we can turn our pain into a form of passion to serve humanity.
So cool. So cool. And thank you for your kind words. And what just came up for me too is like, even in a world of hopelessness or doubt or fear, all it takes is one moment of a glimmer of hope for something to energetically meet you where you are. And whatever you want to call it, a coincidence, a divine miracle, whatever you believe in, like, you will be met there if you are seeking. So even if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling down, or you're feeling like, why am I going through all of this? All it takes is one glimmer of that hope, which really brings me to the second thing I wanted to ask about what you were saying last is like, when we are you are such a beautiful example of like you. And again, if you guys missed the first episode that Jessie was on the podcast, like she shared a lot more of her journey and what she went through, and anybody who hears it, I remember the first time I heard your story, I was like, how is this woman even surviving, let alone, to me, I just like beyond empathy and compassion, because I could just feel the pain that your little girl and adult woman self went through. And, the fact that you are who you are and became who you became off the back of that is a God-given miracle. But that being said, it took you from going from the distinction of victim to victor, because it would have been so easy for you to be like, no, this is what happened to me, so of course I'm going to go down this road of despair and sorrow and victimhood and all that, right? So when it comes to getting out of that story, arguing with the reality of our circumstances and turning it into something more, what do you like, if you were to speak into finding that victor and not going down the road of victim and arguing for your limitations, what would you say about that? Because there's a lot of people that could get stuck in that of like, oh no, this is just who I am, or this is what happened to me, and so I can't, or I'll never.
Right. Now, it's so true. And, it's a good, valid question. And when I think about it, it makes me think to step outside for a second, like step outside of the consuming story of what happened to us, because society teaches us to focus on what's wrong, not what's right. And if we're breathing, there's an opportunity to focus and be grateful for your breath, because somebody with COPD doesn't have the same ability, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we can start to, I want to bring curiosity. Be curious. Be curious. If there's something that's not, even though you got your story and this happened to me, and don't you know, I'm limited because of this, right? Seek answers. Like the story of the two Vietnam vets, two different stories. This was an event where they complete, a questionnaire and they tell a little bit of their story. Two different people, similar stories, right? And one, the similarities was they both went into the Vietnam War with their best friend from high school. Okay. And they were in there. The first one tells the story of him and his buddy walking through the jungle, trying to get to the other side. And his buddy's up ahead and they're walking slowly as there's bullets are flying or whatever. And his buddy steps on a landmine and he watches his buddy explode in a million pieces. It's so traumatic. The second story, him and his buddy are in a foxhole. And they're in there and the bullets are flying like crazy. So they're ducking and they're in this foxhole and they're waiting. And all of a sudden it goes quiet. And his buddy's like, I'm going to make sure the coast is clear so we can go. Lifts his head up, gets his brains blown out instantly. And his friend is witness to that. Now, both these gentlemen go home. The first guy is an alcoholic. He's, been, trying to find a place to live. He's been in and out of homelessness, and literally just has not had any family in his life or whatever. And interviewing him and talking to him, and he's like, well, don't you understand? You better not let anybody get close. You better not love too hard, because the minute you do, it gets taken from you. Mm. So he was pushing everybody away. And he believed that if you love, because he was so hurt from losing his friend. The second person, he had a family, he was successful, and he was living a very joyful life. And we interviewed him and like, what happened? And he said, you know what? My belief is you better love every minute of every day, because you never know when it'll get taken from you. Mm. So if there's one human being that can have a traumatic experience, but is willing to find the gift, willing to look for what could be good about this, what could be good about this. And trust me, my brother was murdered when he was 29 years old. So if you would have asked me to find the good back then, I might have punched you in the nose. Right. But you know what? If I don't find the gift, I suffer. And I argue with reality. Because the fact is, my brother's not here. If I walk around saying that shouldn't have happened, and I did for a minute, I flipped God off. I was like, this is not just, there's no good reason. He was a good man. He was my only safety as a child. I couldn't. But if I didn't seek for the gift, because again, if I argue with reality, as Byron Katie says, I lose 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. So since it is my reality, and I do believe, and I have a mantra that I live by, my dog's having a nightmare. Everything happens for our highest and greatest good, even the suck. Mm. And if I'm going to believe that, I'm going to find the gift in all of it, even when I feel the wind out of my sails, even when I feel there's no answer, even when I feel I'm just stuck in the situation. I'm going to say, what is the gift in this? What is the good? What could be good about this? Well, I'm still alive. If God wants me here, then I guess maybe there's something I'm meant to do with all of this pain. Yeah. So my invitation is get curious. What could that be?
Mm-hmm.
What could it be that, why are you here? Why did you experience what you experienced?
Yeah.
And seek the gift, because I don't believe God wastes the pain.
Yeah.
I believe we do if we choose to. So if you are a seeker and you get curious about what happened to you, you can find the gift. And every single day that I serve somebody in grief, I honor my brother's life.
Yeah. Amen. And it's just a testament to, I mean, that the anecdote you shared about the two guys, similar circumstances, Vietnam, witnessing trauma. It's never our circumstances that cause us this pain. It's our thoughts about these circumstances, and two different examples of two different thought processes that cause an entire different chain reaction of feelings, actions, and results. And it's never our circumstances, it's always our thoughts, you know? And like, if there's any one thing that just what I'm hearing from what you said, it's like, we have a choice. The circumstances of our lives, like, again, we don't ignore the fact that they suck. They were awful. It was unfair, right? It wasn't okay. All of these things, acknowledging it. We're not like painting roses and butterflies on trauma here, right? But what happens afterwards, and the narrative and the thoughts that we create about our circumstances, is where we have the ability to feed the future and possibility and miracles and purpose, or we have the ability to take ourselves down the rabbit hole of despair. And it really is as simple as like, what do you choose?
And either way, you're right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right.
Yeah.
So if you choose to focus on what's right, and the beauty of what you just said is that we have control. We have the power to determine what we choose moving forward from our experience. The canvas is clean. It's white. You got the paintbrush in your hand. What do you choose to create from this moment forward?
Yeah.
Because you can make your life a masterpiece. But again, if you only focus on the pain, you lose the gift.
Yeah.
And the gift is part of your divine journey. Again, if it was woven, like, imagine that you made this contract with God before you got here. And if we look at it from that context, like, my dad was partnered with me. My ex-husband was partnered with me, all to get me to this place where I can serve a Leanne in the world. Then God bless them for being the darkness in my journey to help me awaken to my light. And that could be possible for every single one of you.
And we are experiencing and hearing the ripple effect of that choice that you made, you know? So that being said, you know, talking about this concept of turning that pain into purpose and passion, and maybe even finding your like life's work in that. You know, some people might be saying like, well, you know, I want to turn it into something, but I'm not ready to, like, I'm not like you, Leanne. I'm not turning it into a business or anything like that. Can we talk about like, what would it look like to turn it into purpose in a way that's not about business or anything like that? You know, like, how do we make that, give it the meaning that would set us in a trajectory of love and light and acceptance?
Such a beautiful question. And here's the thing. It's the secret, right? Like, it isn't complicated. How do we turn it into purpose? By serving another human being. Don't underestimate the power of your kindness. Kindness is what woke me up to want life. Those people will never know. They'll never know that it was their act of kindness with me that made me want what I didn't know what to call it. I don't know, but this feeling, I want more of this.
Yeah.
And so don't underestimate the power of your smile. Don't underestimate the power of holding space for somebody and allowing them to just share with you. You don't have to fix anything. Just be kind. Be kind and compassionate and understanding, right? It's like we're conditioned, even road rage. Like, you know, I went and visited a friend. I hadn't seen him in years. And he's a really like great human being. He's right beneath the Dalai Lama. He talked to this person and he's had this spiritual journey. And I got in his car and I got to tell you, it was just like, oh my God, this person, and cut me off and da-da-da. Oh my God, the drivers, and it's just going on. And I'm like, whoa. And he caught himself. I'm just like, yeah, I go, maybe they're on their way to the hospital because their child is sick or something. Like, I don't, and so that's a different perspective. Is bring compassion. And look, we're human, right? We're human. We stub our toe, it's still going to hurt. Yeah. Someone treats us unkind, we're still going to feel, right? So I'm not saying to avoid your feelings, but what I am saying is don't underestimate the power of your love, the power of your grace to somebody. And here's the thing, just said this to my son the other day. One of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself and others is to forgive someone who never gave you the apology. Mm. And why? Because it frees you, right? Because we forgive because of the consequences of unforgiveness and what that does to us, right? It's poison in our bodies. And when you're able to release and surrender that hurt and that pain and you forgive, you show up and you fall in love, not only with yourself for being able to release that, but with others, because it allows you to see humanity from a different set of lenses. When you fall in love with who you are, hey, guess what? You're human and so are they. And now you're able to see witness to humanity being human. We're humaning. We're, upset. We're blaming. We're, that happened to me. Don't you know? I'm justified in my rage. And I'm like, yes, I get that, but you're wearing it in your body. And so I'm here to free you. I'm not saying what happened to you was okay. I'm not saying that it was right. I'm saying that your suffering is optional. Let's get you out of that.
Yeah. And it's so, and I can only speak for myself, but I can imagine that there's probably others that are listening that feel this way too. When I am in my own victimhood and I'm thinking about what happened to me or what's not working, all that, I had finally a high enough level of awareness like many moons ago to realize like, wow, I am being so selfish right now. It's all about me, right? And I remember I had this awareness, this is, many moons ago when I lived back in Orlando. And I remember I just typed in volunteer opportunities Orlando. And I found this really cool ministry for teens and I started volunteering and I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I needed because I got out of my own head. And so I think also like what happens is that victimhood, we think, we're doing a service to society by, holding on to our beliefs or whatever it is, but like, we're really staying in this kind of like self-absorbed space. At least that's what my experience was like for me, so that being said, this is a big portion of the work that you do. You help people like really just transform their entire identity around who they're being and how they're feeling and how they're showing up and extend it outwardly, whether it is into family, relationships, business, commerce, all of that. But that being said, you've been doing this work for a very long time. What are some of the beliefs, just so we can kind of identify them and anybody's listening can just have that new awareness? Like, what are some of the beliefs that you run up against with your clients that keep people from taking this transformational path, that keep them stuck in the stories of their trauma, their circumstances, their, just what happened to them? What are some of the beliefs that we should be aware of that can be kind of keeping us stuck?
Sure. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? Like sometimes we don't even recognize that the thing that happened is still showing up today. Like, no, I forgave, I'm all good, right? Like I talked to this gentleman who was like 400 pounds and he's like, you know what? I don't need to forgive my mother. I honestly don't care. I've let it go. Like she lives 3 blocks down the road and I never see her and I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need to forgive anything because I've let it go, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and I had rapport, obviously. And I said, my friend, you are wearing it. And he recognized like, oh, like his beliefs are, I've let it go. But he hasn't, because there's still an essence of unworthiness that he feels based on how his mom treated him. Right. So the beliefs are, one, ask yourself, how do you feel? Be cognizant of the ego mind that says, I'm good. Right. What's funny is some of the people that come, they're like, I don't need mindset. I'm good with that. Just give me the tools and the strategy that I need. And I'm like, no, like they don't think they need that. And it's all around your beliefs. Even, Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about one of the biggest killers is our stress. Well, what is our stress? Our stress is all based around our belief systems and what is literally having our body fight itself every single day. And that is wrapped around unforgiveness. It's wrapped around, anger, rage, frustration, resentment. If you're in a situation where you find that you're in judgment, that's a key element. If you're in judgment, check in with yourself, because when you're in judgment of another human being, it's because they are mirroring something back to you that you're judging yourself about. So honesty, vulnerability, super important. Look, I was a victim in my victim story too. My mom taught me well, right? And so vulnerability and being willing to say, I am not where I want to be, and I don't know why, and I can't forgive my dad. I just can't, because somehow we have a belief that the forgiveness is justifying the behavior and that they're getting off the hook. But your unforgiveness is poisoning you. So you have to shift your belief. One, what could be good about this? What I use God a lot, and whatever your God is, spirit, source, universe, whatever your beliefs are. I'm not here. This isn't about religion. There is a higher power. Something is telling our heart to beat. Something is telling our lungs to breathe. So if you could ask, what is this divine guidance that I'm being brought to? Powerful questions. One of my questions in the past was, what's wrong with me? That would be my question all the time, right? We beat ourselves up and it's just like, why can't I figure this out? What's wrong with me? And I would always go,
there's a belief that there's something wrong with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So shift the questions. What could be good about this? Why is this happening for my highest and greatest good? What muscle am I being called to build? Because here's what I know about every single human being that's listening today. You have had a drop to your knees moment. You have had pain in your life in one way or another. You're still here. You're still here. So there's something beautiful woven in that. Courage, determination, will to live, perseverance, tenacity, stubbornness. Something has you still being here, even though you've had those drop to your knees moments. So there is a gift in all of it. You built, in a moment of massive fear, you built a massive courage muscle. In the moment where you didn't think you could go anymore, you persevered. So if you start to see through the lenses of what is possible, what could be good about this, what muscle am I being called to build in this moment that I feel I got sucker punched, I lost my career, or my husband left me, or whatever, it's just like, what could be good about this? What's the opportunity that's waiting around the corner that I'm not witness to right now because all I see is my pain? Right? It's like that. There's a beautiful little cartoon that shows Christ, and he's got a big, huge teddy bear behind his back. And there's a little girl with this tiny little teddy bear, and she's holding it on, and he's got his hand out like, give me your teddy bear. And she doesn't know that he's got this big, huge one waiting for her, but she has to surrender the little one. And she just doesn't want to. She's holding on tight. This is my teddy, right? So what if we look at life like that? What if we look at life as it's an opportunity for our expansion or growth versus the universe doesn't have my back or everything's happening to me instead of for me or from me.
Yeah.
Shift the belief to possibility, right? Who was it? Henry Ford or someone, he said, be solution-minded, not problem-focused.
Yeah. Absolutely. The version, I love that cartoon that you're talking about, actually. And the version that I saw, it said something along the lines of like, if only she knew I had something so much better for her prepared, like ahead of her, something like that, and that's it. We grip on so tight to our stories thinking this is what I need to grip onto. And it's like, no, if you just let go and you surrender, there's so much more waiting for you on the other side, and I love that you brought in the spiritual side of it because, I think for me, and I've been very vocal on my, with what's God got to do with it, part 1 and part 2 of this podcast, like whether it's you're connected to the energetic conversation, whether it's the universe is part of the conversation, whether it's a God, whether it's Jesus, whatever it is, right? Whether I resonate with the term spiritual gangster. What can I say? But that being said, it's like, there is something bigger and greater that if we choose to look at it, because again, it's a choice, we can look at it like the world and universe, God, whatever is conspiring against me, or I'm being punished or whatever. Or it's like, what does he, she, whatever the case may be, have for me? What is out there? What's available to me? And again, it comes back to like living at choice rather than feeling like choices are constantly being taken away from us.
Yeah. And be an observer, because you are not your thoughts. Mm-hmm. Okay. You are the awareness beneath the thought, right? The acknowledgement, as Eckhart Tolle says, the acknowledgement of the thought itself. So when you feel despair, when you feel there's no way out, sit back in the awareness of what's happening within your thoughts, like a movie. And when you're in that awareness, you are now at the helm of choice. So here's what Jessie's believing. Oh, this thing scared her. This thing hurt her. Okay, what does she want instead? Oh, well, she wants freedom. She wants joy. Okay, what has to happen for her to have joy in this moment? And the ego is going to want to say nothing. Don't you see this thing happen? And she needs to be upset about it or angry. And it's just like, but it's not true. If you don't like how you're feeling, check in. Be the observer of your thought and your emotional home. And then decide what you want. You have the power to shift it, but you need to be in the awareness of it. Don't be in jail because of it, right? It's not, your mind is not your prison. If you choose it to be.
Mm-hmm. But you have to take the key and get your own freedom. Nobody can give it to you. Nobody can want it for you. It's got to be. And again, I think it's conversations like these to give people awareness of like, there is something on the other side of this. I don't care how dark of a road you've been down. There's a way out, but you have to choose it. So right. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Anything else that's on your heart that you want to share before we wind down this conversation?
I always feel into these questions, and what comes to mind in this moment, the world needs you. We're in despair. We're confused. We're scared. And the power of love, it transcends all dimensions. So don't underestimate who you are as a warrior of light. We need your love. We need your help. And we can't get that when you are beating yourself up, when you are judging who you are. So be courageous enough to reach out, because we need you. This isn't about, it's about Ram Dass's quote, right? We are all just walking each other home. And if Leanne or I can help you, we're happy to do that. We're just like you. We're just a different part of the road. That's it. And so from that, allow us to be someone that can speak that life into you, because you matter to every single human being you touch, because you don't know what's going on in that person's world, what kind of pain they're in. And your one word can help shift them like it did for me. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you. Amen. Appreciate you so much. If anybody wants to just find out more about you, we'll put it in the show notes. We did last time too. Is there anywhere specific that they should look for you to find you on the interwebs?
Yes, you can go to Fierce Grace Transformation, things about Fierce Grace, fiercegracetransformation.com. And you can, schedule a call with me. You can read about, who I am and why you should even have a conversation with me. And I'm just happy to support you in any way that I can. But that's the quickest way to get there. You can contact me and get on my calendar, and I'm happy to have a conversation.
Amazing. Fierce Grace Transformation. We will link that in the show notes. Jessie, thanks for being back on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your heart, your truth, and your time. We appreciate you. And thanks for tuning in, ladies. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into today's show. If you like what you heard and you're interested in breaking out of your own food, body, and diet prison, here's what I want you to do next. Head on over to stresslesseating.com. That's stresslesseating.com. And sign up to watch the Stressless Eating webinar, where I'll walk you through the exact 5-step game plan my female clients use to conquer emotional eating, self-sabotage, and finally heal themselves from the restrictive all-or-nothing diet mentality for good. But without obsessing or spending years in therapy to address it. I've laid it all out there for you in 5 easy steps. Remember, healing your relationship with food and your body does not happen by itself.
You need expert guidance to make it happen, and we've helped clients all over the world take back their power from the food and find true and lasting freedom while enjoying life and warm chocolate chip cookies along the way. To see if we can help you do the same, head on over to stresslesseating.com. I'm Leanne Ellington, and I'll see you next time.